welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Dave Bailey. This is Grief and Grace. Obviously, this has been a challenging year for a lot of families, especially when you consider the loss of now over 300,000 people due to the COVID pandemic. And in the middle of all of that, the holidays can be really emotionally intimidating. And part of that, I think, is because the myth and magic of Christmas is supposed to make this the happiest time of the year. And yet the truth is that times of celebration don't diminish awareness of loss. They magnify it. They magnify that empty place at the table, which is why I'm so thankful to have Sherrie Dunlevy as my guest tonight. Sherrie is a former TV news anchor, radio talk show personality, and she is now an author, speaker, host of the podcast Graduating Grief, and a self-described Inspirationista. I don't know if that's a real word or whatever, but I like it. Sherrie knows the depth of grief from personal experience and has committed herself to helping others successfully work their way through that challenge. And part of that is a workshop that we'll talk about tonight that she facilitates called Navigating the Holidays. And if you know someone that could benefit from the ideas we're going to be talking about tonight, why don't you go ahead and tag them in the comments so that they get a notification, they can come join us. And also, if you have a question or something that you'd like Sherrie to address, just put it in the comments and we'll take some time to deal with as many of those as we can before the end of the show. So, Sherrie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, David. So glad to be here. And thank you for bringing me on to share this with people, because you said, yeah, it's the happiest time of the year. You know, 'tis the season to be jolly. And it's not always the case. And it's magnified now during this pandemic.
Yes. And I was thinking this afternoon after we talked, I got a note from my cousin whose husband passed away about maybe a month ago. They'd been married, I think, 48 years. And she sent a note, said, I'll be watching tonight. And so, then my cousin's son, who was 38, just dropped dead of a heart attack this year, leaving a wife and a son and a daughter. So, this whole idea of navigating the holidays is really close to me and close to my heart and close to my family. And I'm super excited that you're here. I'm super excited that our mutual friend Stephanie introduced us. Yes. And said, you guys need to talk, because she knew we had common interest and a common heart that we shared. So I'm just super glad. I just think this is the right time for you to be here and share with the people that interact with the Grief and Grace show. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm very sorry for the losses in your family. It's not easy at all. Not easy at all. So.
And then in the work that I do, I mean, I deal with grieving families every day, so you just see that, and you see how necessary this kind of a conversation is. So, yeah.
Right.
So let's start here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, the focus of the work that you do, and how you became involved in the grief and loss space.
Okay. It's an interesting story. It all started 21 years ago while I was on television as a television news anchor. I started at that station right out of college. So my audience saw me grow up before their eyes, get married, have my first son. I was pregnant with my second son. And then they shared in the sadness and the grief and the mourning of the loss of my second son, Brandon. And so that's where our journey began way back when. But I didn't think that I was going to be in the grief or loss arena at all. It wasn't really until I left that career after another year. I was just unable to do that. Your priorities change. And I had a 3-year-old son at home. And so I wanted to go home and raise him. And so that's what I did. But it wasn't until my oldest son was in high school that I started feeling like there was this call to write a book. So the part that I left out when we lost our son Brandon. Yes, the audience, many members were there. Many family members, many friends were there to love on us and support us and carry us through. But at the same time, my husband and I lost some of our closest friends. They just kind of disappeared out of our life. And through the years, as I was stronger, as I had healed, I would often think back, what was that about? Why would people do that? Why would they desert you at a time when you needed them the most? And that question really was what got me started in the grief arena, because I kept thinking, well, if there was only some kind of book or some kind of resource out there that could tell people exactly what to do, what to say to help their friends when they need them the most, then maybe it would save friendships. Maybe it would save relationships. And so I don't know if I was setting out to buy that book for somebody, but every time I looked for that book, anytime I walked into a bookstore, anytime I would go on Amazon, anytime that I would Google it, I would walk away with this feeling of, Sherrie, the only way you're going to find that is if you write it. And that kind of took me back, because I don't really ever remember having anything like said to me, like feeling this message inside. And so I ignored it, of course. And that's what I always tell people. The difference between a calling and a good idea is that God never stops calling you until you answer one way or another. So in that vein, I decided that I should probably write a book about that, what people could do and say. And so I started my project of How Can I Help? Your go-to guide for helping loved ones through life's difficulties. So that's how I got started. And what I realized is that God was really preparing me all those years through being on television, through being a radio talk host. I had been interviewing people, collecting information, compiling information. That's what I did for a living. And this was no different, because this is not a book of my ideas. This is a book, a compilation of many people sharing their stories, sharing their sorrows, and sharing the ways that their family and friends lifted them up and carried them through the darkest times of their life. So that's where my grief journey began. So I wrote the book and basically said, okay, God, there it is. And now let me go do my thing. And he just kind of laughed at that. So he kept pulling me back in. And I think that I was just afraid. I was really afraid to be too close to other people's pain. And so I just kind of had a talk, and I said, you know that I'm sensitive to all of this. What should I do? And the answer came back to me, Sherrie, I don't really want you in the space of the early grief and the pain. What I want you to do is what you've done. I want you to shine a light on hope and healing for other people. Let them know that it's possible. Let them know that I want them to step back into their life. You've done it. You've created this new beautiful life despite the fact that you've lost your son. And I want you to lead people to that. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
Wow. Hey, so I want to talk to you about other things, but just as you were sharing that story, how many years from Brandon's death till you really began to deal with it and said, I need to pull these stories together, I need this book? How long was that period of time?
Wow. I would say that it was every bit a good 15 years.
What's fascinating to
15 years.
Yeah. What's fascinating to me about that, and I think important to point out for people, is that sometimes people think, I'm going to deal with my grief in the first 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or 5 years. And grief will get around to being dealt with when it's its time, when you're ready, when you feel safe, when you have all the skills you need. And if it's 15 years down the track, that's okay. It's interesting.
Yeah. And, I have a couple of feelings about that. And I don't, this is my experience. So I'm just speaking from my experience. I have had issues with dealing with depression in the past. And so when my son was sick, my doctor thought it might be best that I go on
Mhm.
antidepressants. And so I think it really kept damped down the grief. I kept describing it to people and even to counselors. I feel like it's in there and I can't bring it up. I can't
Wow.
release it.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not saying that that's not helpful for some people and that it wasn't even helpful for me, but I don't feel I was able to purge, have that great guttural reaction
yes.
to my son's death, because I was actually on the antidepressants while he was still alive.
Wow,
So that being said, I was on them for 13 years
wow.
and decided it was time for me to come off around the same time that I decided to write the book, around the same time that my oldest son was getting close to graduating. So I realized, oh my gosh, I might be losing my other son. I better deal with this.
Yes, yes. That's,
Yeah,
I think the message in all of that for people who might be struggling with grief is don't judge yourself. Don't,
right,
if it's like 5 years down the track and you feel like you haven't dealt with it yet, that's okay. Don't judge yourself. You know,
right.
yeah, there'll be a time and a place, and a good time and place. So yeah, I know this year one of the things that you did, one of the gifts that you gave to the community that you influence, is 5 workshops called Navigating the Holidays. And, I want that to be the main focus of our
Right.
conversation tonight, walking through some of the key principles that you taught in that course. And I know that you started with ideas about expectations and the permissions that we are free to give ourselves. So take
Right,
it away.
right. Absolutely. We there's our feelings that we're having surrounding the holidays right now are our feelings. And the first thing I want to let people know is that your job is to get through this as best as you can and to take care of you. It's not really a time to take care of everybody else and everybody else's needs. And oh, my family's going to be so disappointed if I'm not here. And what is so and so going to be upset if I don't come? Or what if I don't feel like hosting everyone over? We have to stop. How are you feeling? Checking in with your feelings and your emotions. Your grief journey is just that, it's yours. Okay, so that's the first thing. Realize that there is no one way to do this. Okay, I wish that I could come here and say, if you follow A, B, C, and D, you'll get through perfectly fine. But that's just not how it's going to be. So I want to let you know that it's okay to do what you feel like doing or to not do what you don't feel like doing. Okay. So if you always had the family over, if you always hosted the big dinner or whatever, if you don't feel up to it, you need to have a discussion ahead of time and let people know, not this year. I cannot bring myself to do it this year. There may be people who are disappointed, and that's okay. It is okay. You have to do again what's best for you. It doesn't mean that it has to be forever. It just means this year. I had a friend who told me a year after her husband died, she sat her children down and she said, I want to get through to the 26th of December, and I need to get through it without any recognition whatsoever of Christmas. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check myself into a bed and breakfast. And she went to Amish country where there was no TVs, no TV reception, no internet. She brought some books, she brought some snacks, and she checked in on the 24th and she checked out on the 26th, and she said it was the best thing that she ever did. She just woke up and she went home, and Christmas is over, and she didn't do it. And she was free then to celebrate the holidays the next year with her family. Now, her family wasn't exactly on board. Her family thought, we, Mom, your place is with us, with your family, with the people who love you. But she said, no, I have to do this for me. And she was courageous enough to do that. And so I want to give you that permission. If you can't write your own permission slip, Sherrie Dunlevy is giving you the permission right now. Do what you feel like doing and don't do what you don't feel like doing. It is okay. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to say, I don't think I'm going to come over and have dinner with you or open gifts. I'm just not in a frame of mind. And then you wake up on Christmas morning and you say, I think I really want to be around people. It's okay to change your mind. It's also okay to say, I can't do it. I just don't want to do it today. So it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to maybe go for a little bit and then come home if it gets overwhelming. You know, it's okay to cry. It's okay to also feel joy. A lot of times we feel them simultaneously. The tears will be coming down. They are healing. Know that. Okay. But at the same time, someone might be telling a story that is hilarious and you're laughing and it might catch you off guard. I shouldn't be laughing. I shouldn't be laughing while my husband is buried. I can't do that. That's so wrong. It's not. You're alive. You're human. You have emotions. We're not robots going through this thing called life. And we're going to run through the whole, scale of emotions at one point or another. And they're all okay. And for anyone who might be watching tonight and you have loved ones that, are grieving, start this conversation with them. And please listen to what they're telling you and go with what they're telling you. Sometimes we love our parents, we love our siblings, we love, whomever, and we think we know what's best for them. But truly, they know what's best for them. So don't force them, but always leave the door open. I say if someone says no, I'm not coming over for the holidays, you can always call them right before, just in case you changed your mind. Just wanted to let you know you're welcome. Can we bring you dinner over? Would you mind if we did that? Can we call you after just to see how you're doing? There's just little things that you can do to show people that you care about them and that you love them without forcing them into doing something that they just feel they can't do. And another thing that I want to encourage everyone, it is okay to say their name, to mention their name, to talk about them. Because you know what, David, a lot of times people will go to, someone's home and everyone there is afraid to say anything. And so no one does because they're afraid they're going to make Cheryl cry. And so no one says anything. And then what happens? Cheryl goes home and she is devastated because they forgot about her husband. No one mentioned him at all. How could they not bring him up? Now, the people at the party are thinking they're protecting her, right? They don't want to make her cry. They don't want to upset her. And she's thinking they forgot about him, right? And so if Cheryl just says their name, she lifts the lid and grants permission for everyone. And that's a beautiful thing.
I think what's interesting, and I say to people, quite often when I'm meeting with families, we begin to talk about this, and other family members, I will say to them, look, he or she is going to be on their mind, and he or she is on your mind. You can talk about them.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, I'm thinking about Bill, but I can't say his name. She's thinking about Bill. Say his name.
Right.
Say a memory. Say what you remember. Say what you love. Say what you cherish. Say something that makes you smile at the holiday season. Say something that you'll miss. Just have this honest conversation. I know you're thinking about Bill. I wanted you to know that I'm thinking about Bill. This is what was running through my mind. And it's just open and transparent and honest. And I just keep coming back to that for people. They're thinking about their loved one. It's okay to mention his name.
Right. I think sometimes, though, we're afraid we're going to make that person cry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're going to cry one way or another, right? But the second thing is that we might be a little uncomfortable with them crying. And
Yes.
so, is it really? Or so by mentioning their name, by telling a story, you're giving them a gift, and by being present and acknowledging whatever emotion they have, you're also giving them a gift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So often people get raised in homes where very few emotions were validated.
Hmm.
You weren't allowed to have sadness, you weren't allowed to have whatever. And so, people get raised in an environment where maybe um, the only validated emotion might have been anger or whatever. And so they are so uncomfortable with their own emotional state that other people's emotions make them very uncomfortable. And yeah,
Right.
it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yes.
So, permission giving.
Yeah. So those are some of the main ones, and I think that also okay to start a tradition or to halt one if it's too
Hmm.
painful. If mom always hosted Christmas dinner, and everyone went over to mom's house for Christmas, okay, and mom, you know, isn't there, of course, that tradition, dad might not, it might be too much for dad to do, right?
Hmm.
And so maybe it's time to pass it on to someone else, or maybe it's time for dad to say, I can't do it this year, let's revisit this next year, but I can't do it this year, or switch the tradition. Maybe it's time to pass it down to someone else.
Yes, absolutely. That's very cool. And in your workshop, you talk about different ways, to honor and to remember
Hmm.
a loved one during the holidays. So we talk about saying their name. How do you incorporate honor?
I, you know, I will start with something that my mother-in-law did after my son Brandon died. She hosted Thanksgiving, and what she did was she brought, before we said grace, she asked us to gather around the table. She asked me if it was okay ahead of time, and I just thought it was beautiful. And she had this angel candle, and she placed it on the table, and she lit this candle in memory of Brandon. And then as a family we said grace, so we had our a moment of silence and remembrance and inclusion, that he's still a part of our family and a part of our gathering, right? And now 21 years later, that candle is lit for multiple family members
Wow.
who are no longer part of that. And she takes that candle to every family gathering, no matter who's hosting Thanksgiving, no matter who's hosting Christmas or whatnot. So that's like one of my all-time favorites.
Wow.
Another one that I think is really nice is, a lot of times people have problems with parting with their beloved's belongings,
Yes.
right? And so, what if Grandma this year takes some of Grandpap's little things that were lying around the house, and she gives his toolbox to Bobby, and she gives his fishing rod to so and so, and she, really thinks about who these gifts should go to and why she thinks that this would be a good present. And that all of a sudden she is able to part with some of those, but she is passing them down through the family or friends. And all of a sudden, those little things, an ashtray, becomes a treasure.
Yes. True.
So that's another good thing. You know, One of the things that I did, unbeknownst to me at the time, but my grandmother was getting up there in age. And one of the things that I did for her a year before she died, but you could do this after someone dies, is I collected all of her favorite recipes, family favorite recipes, and I put them in a cookbook along with some quips from her. And we printed them out and we gave those away as Christmas gifts. And it was a McCutcheon, family tradition cookbook. And so if mom had all these wonderful recipes, collect them, put them into a book, and gift them to the family. It's a great way to celebrate that. On that same note, you know, if your brother's favorite meal was beanies and weenies, serve that as a side dish. in honor or memory of them, no matter if it doesn't fit in with Christmas or not. I mean, I think it's a great way to honor them. What you could do too is, did they have a favorite organization or charity that they were very fond of? You can gather as a family and volunteer, or collect money and put it donate it in their name. You can also for one of the things that I was very passionate about is, I gave birth to two sons, but every Christmas I was only buying for one. So I would take a little boy's name off of an angel tree, and I would provide him Christmas. And if you decide this year, I don't want to do the holidays, I don't want my family around. Well, my goodness, we have so many families in need. Give them the holiday, give them the blessing, and just pass it on in that way. So, you can hang ornaments. I have ornaments on my tree that every time I hang them, I remember my son, and I remember my aunt, and I even remember past pets. They were a part of my family and who I loved and who we celebrated with. And this is a way to, include their memory in as we move forward in our life. So those are just some creative things that families could do to include or honor or remember their loved ones during the holidays.
I love it. It was, as you were talking, what it made me think of a house filled with people, filled with family. They're not all in the same room. You're in the kitchen, you're laughing and talking with some are in the living room, some are in the den, some are maybe down in the man cave watching football on Thanksgiving. But there is a sense of their nearness, and there's a sense that they're honored and part of the atmosphere. And even though someone has transitioned and they're in another room, we can still fill the place where we're at with a joy of how much we love them, how much we cherish them, all of the things that we would do if they were on the other side of the house, if they were out of eyesight, out of earshot, but still very vibrant in our heart. And there's just so many things like that rather than tiptoeing around them, to just embrace them and put your arms around this
Yes,
joy.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, and if not with the deepest sense of gratitude that you have to spend so many holidays with them, and just fill your heart with that.
Yeah, for sure. So the third part of your workshop was to devise a holiday game plan. Can you unpack that? Yeah, what's that all about?
Well, I go through an exercise with people in my workshops, because a lot of times when you're grieving, you just have all these negative thoughts just rolling around in your head. What if this happens? What if this happens? What am I going to do if they say this? What am I going to do if they do this? What if I go there and then I don't want to? And so we just build up all this fear, all this anxiety just around it, way, way, way too much. And chances are, less than 5% of that stuff is going to happen. So what I try to do is encourage people to get it out of their mind and put it down on paper. What are those things that you're most concerned about during the holiday season? What are those things that you are most fearful about? What are those things that you're really dreading about the holiday season? Put them down on paper. Get them out of your head and put them down on paper. And then I go through and I let them know, listen, the holidays, when it comes to the holidays, it's like your senses are in sensory overload, and our senses are connected to our emotions and our thoughts, right? And so grief, as we know it, can come in waves. And so there might be certain triggers. Okay, there might be certain smells. When you smell that Christmas ham, is that going to trigger a memory? When you hear that Christmas carol, is that going to trigger a memory? When your dad always put the star on the tree and you look at your tree and, you've got to put the star on or whatnot, and that's, I'm going to get sick to my stomach if, I walk in there and that star's on the tree, and, because dad always put that on the tree. So I'm just going to freak out, So what I encourage people to do is to take all those fears, all of those triggers that they think they might be having, all those things that they think that, might trigger them. And I want them to put that in this scenario. If this happens, if blank happens, then I can blank, and figure out ahead of time. So for example, after we lost our son Brandon, we went to this wonderful support group called Share. And the facilitator of that group, she always told us, I'm going to tell you, when you go to church and you go for the holidays, I want you to sit on the aisle. Sit on the aisle. And we were like, well, why do you want us to do that? And she told, when she lost her child and she went to Mass, and she was sitting on the end, but you know how it is on Christmas, more people keep coming, and you get pushed to the middle. Okay. So here she was sitting in the middle, and she was fine. And all of a sudden the Ave Maria, someone started singing the Ave Maria, and the grief just came over her like a wave. And she looked to her right, and there were 10 people on this side, and she looked to her left, and there were 8 people on this side, and she was trapped. And she said the only thing she could do was pull her coat up over her head and just sob. And she stayed that way until everyone left the church. And so she was like, come up with your game plan, let people pass by you, stand your ground, just let them come by you, plan your escape route. Okay, so come up with these scenarios. If this happens, then I can sit on the end. Then I can get up and leave the church. Okay, if I, am in a store and I hear my, my dad's favorite Christmas carol, I can make sure I have tissues in my purse. I can know where the closest exit is. I can look for the bathroom, so just things like that, just setting this up and coming up with the game plan. Chances are these things are never going to happen, but just getting them out of your head, getting them onto paper and going, oh, okay, well, if this happens, then I'm going to do this. I can handle that. No problem. I got this. It just kind of gives you a little bit of confidence going into these situations that maybe you've been conjuring up in your head as being fearful or making you feel anxious inside.
What I love about that is you're empowering yourself. You're taking the initiative back. You're taking the power back. You're taking the control of the situation back. It's not like this is going to happen and I'm going to be totally out of control and totally destroyed. I have no idea what's going to happen. You're like, no, if this, then that, I can be in control.
Yeah. If I'm at my son's house and I start getting really upset, I can excuse myself and go upstairs to my room.
Yep.
I can step outside for 15 minutes. I can walk around the block.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, if this, then that. And and re-empowering yourself going into the holidays with a sense. Yeah, that's very cool. Finally, you end your workshop talking about the importance of self-care and what that looks like. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I speak as a woman. I am the Christmas magic maker in my family. I have to share the story really quickly. My husband said, he wanted to know where he could get some gift bags because he had 3 presents to wrap. And I said, there's wrapping paper in the other room. And he said, I'm trying to keep my stress level down. And I went, what? You have 3 presents to wrap? I
like him. I like him already. Shopping. I like him.
But so what I'm saying is, a lot of times some of us just try to do it all, right? We want to bake and we want to shop, and we think that by doing we're loving, and we think that by doing we're going to take our minds off of things, and we can run ourselves into the ground. This is, 'tis the season for cold and flu and COVID-19. And if we are not taking care of ourselves in a way that helps protect our health, because grief takes its toll on your body.
Yes.
I remember, if you don't deal with your grief, your body doesn't let go of it. It
No.
doesn't forget. And let me tell you, right after my son died, a year later on Mother's Day, in my sleep, I sneezed and my disc exploded.
Mm.
I was holding my grief in my lower
Yep.
back.
Yep.
And so believe me when I tell you, grief will linger in your body.
Yes.
And your immune system is weakened. So we've got to keep our immune system strong. So that means we've got to get our sleep. And if we can't get our sleep, we've got to rest. We've just got to lay on the couch and watch TV or read a book or something. But do not feel guilty about resting.
Yes.
You need to stay hydrated. Okay? You need to drink lots of liquids, and I don't mean wine and eggnog.
Why did you have to say that?
Fine, but you need to stay hydrated. Right?
Yes.
We tend to eat our grief or drink our grief. And there are so many temptations during the holidays.
Totally.
So we have to watch that. So eat the healthy foods first. Eat the healthy food. Say, you know what? I'm going to so-and-so's, but you know what? I'm going to eat a good salad, or I'm going to eat a nice lean protein. I'm going to do that first. And then I can go and I can have my glass of wine. I can have some Christmas cookies. I can have some fruitcake, whatever. So stay hydrated, eat the healthy foods. I'm trying to think of what else. Set healthy boundaries for yourself.
I was just going to say that. Say no when you need to say no, and yes when you need to say yes.
Yes, right, exactly. So taking self-care, and I always say, carve out some quiet time.
Yes.
Sometimes we want our family around. We want the grandchildren. We want the children, around, because that takes our mind off of our pain. But I think that we need to take some time. We need time to breathe, and we need some quiet time of reflection. That is just a good thing for all of us to do, but it really helps you with your self-care.
Yes. Which is sometimes hard. Single mom, single dad, chaos.
Yeah.
It's hard, but important.
Absolutely. It's very important.
Yeah. Wow. So I always try to close our live with some variation of this question. So I'm going to ask this of you tonight. What is the most important thing that you've learned about grief? And what is the most important thing that you would want others to know about you in your grief process?
You're gonna make me cry. I want people to know that your grief doesn't have to define you.
Yes.
It can refine you.
Wow.
And that's what I've tried to let it do for me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again.
You don't have to let your grief define you, but you can let it refine you. It doesn't have to define who you are. I did not want to be known as the poor newswoman who lost her son and could never be happy again.
Yes.
And I think who I've grown into is someone that Brandon would be very proud of to call mom.
Wow. Wow. Now you're going to make me cry. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Thank you. You want to tell us a little bit about your book again before we go? Maybe I'll pull your book
this
up.
Is the perfect book. This is the book that every person should read. Really. Every person should read, and it's the book that definitely every grieving person wishes their friends would read. It tells you really the most helpful things that you can do and say to support your loved ones when they're going through the roughest times of their life. And it's loss, not just death, but loss. It could be a loss of relationship. It could be a loss of their health. It could be a loss of their job. And I mean, you just look at what we're going through in this past year. This is a book that can help everyone, help anyone get through the roughest times of their life. And it's just as essential in your book collection as a good cookbook, I believe.
Hmm. And they can find that at sherriedunlevy.com and
Or on
Amazon.
Amazon,
On
yeah.
Amazon,
Hmm.
okay. So they can
Hmm.
go to Amazon. They can find that. Order it tonight. Have it delivered tomorrow. And yeah, make a great Christmas gift for some people. So yeah,
Yeah, it'd be a great stocking stuffer.
yes,
And if you want to go to sherriedunlevy.com, that's where you can get a signed copy from me, and I can
yes.
sign it to anyone.
And
Yeah.
on your website as well, let me just pull this up if I can. On the website is also, I guess I can't see it. Let me see, podcast, Graduating Grief. On the website, you have a variety of here we go, of the podcast episodes that you've done.
Right. Hmm.
So people can go there as well and access all of that. How
And I
long?
would love for them to join my Facebook group, Graduating Grief. This is a different kind of support group. This is a support group for where we encourage one another and we support one another in our journey to heal, in our journey to live our lives and entertain the idea of living life on purpose with passion and joy so that we can make an impact on the world.
Yes. Wow. All right, sherriedunlevy.com. You can go there. Facebook, your Facebook page is just Sherrie Dunlevy. They can find you.
Sherrie Dunlevy and Graduating Grief. Yeah.
Graduating Grief. All right.
Hmm.
Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the generous gift of your time and just sharing your heart, sharing your transparency, sharing your wisdom. I really, really cherish it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to
Yes,
everyone.
to you as well. All right. I hope this has been a great help for you. Even after this live is over, you can still leave comments or questions. I'll be coming back to interact with those, review the comments, and all of that as we go forward. And don't forget to click on live notifications if you would like to get notifications or a reminder whenever it is that we're going live with a guest. And if you've gotten value out of this, please feel free to share it on all of your social media platforms. And don't forget to leave a comment as well. Thank you, everybody. As Sherrie said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Be safe, be well.